Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. I think the meeting link just ended, but I'm glad hopefully everyone joined back in. No worries. So I'm just going to reshare my screen. Thanks for your flexibility, everyone. Much appreciated. So as I was saying, feel free to please share your name, your role, where you're joining from in the chat, and your favorite thing to do this summer. So if you had already typed it in, if you don't mind just typing it again so we can all be on the same page, and we'll get started momentarily. Wonderful. Some of you may have just been in the first session with Natalie. It was an amazing session. If you didn't have a chance, I think Tatiana, you'll share the recordings of the sessions, so you'll be able to tune in. But thank you for being in this session today, where we'll start the getting started with SpacesEDU. And I have my amazing colleagues Tatiana and Natalie here, who will be helping to moderate and facilitate the session. So they'll be keeping an eye on the chat. We will get started in a moment. I see some of you have been putting in some information in the chat. So it's great to have so many people joining across the country, Vancouver to New Brunswick, amazing. Wonderful. We have Spaces Lead for your school, grade 5 teacher from Vancouver. Welcome everybody, and feel free to share your favorite summer activity. As I mentioned, we still have 1 month of summer to go, so soak up all that time. September is still pretty warm, so I hope we can still get all that outside time. All right, without further ado, we will get started, but feel free to keep adding things in the chat as you go. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Joy. I am a SpacesEDU Education Services Manager, where I work with amazing educators and teachers such as yourself, leading training sessions, supporting with resources, and helping you best leverage SpacesEDU to support student success. I am an educator myself. I worked in the K-8 sphere in the Ontario region, although that is a picture of me at Lake Louise. So I do love going out west when I can. And I really enjoy working with students to connect them with their goals. All of the students we work with are so unique, and it's important for us to find the best way to support them. And using platforms such as SpacesEDU help us do just that. And here's a picture of me. Oops, you almost missed that one. A picture of me sailing in the summer. That's my favorite activity to do with my family, and I love to be out on the water. A couple quick housekeeping notes before we get started. You may be familiar with Zoom, but if not, that's okay. You'll notice on the bottom you have the option to have the chat and the Q&A. So we will be monitoring those. So feel free to add any discussion question points in the chat and any specific questions in the Q&A box. We will be pausing for questions throughout, but we will have time at the end. So rest assured your question will be addressed. There is a session handout that we will share. I'll actually just share it in the chat as well, if you want to follow along. And it also is a great way for after the session for you to be able to best do some of the activities we are talking about today. And today's session is recorded, so no need to take notes. If you want to watch again afterwards, you're more than welcome to. All right, I'm just going to check the chat. Any questions before we get started? No, awesome. So our agenda for today, what is SpacesEDU? We'll dive in. Some of you may be familiar, some of you may be learning, and that's okay. So what is it? We'll jump into a live demo, which I'm sure you're very excited about. I'm looking specifically at just the getting started tip. So how can we set up our spaces? How can we create a post and create a space? As well, how can we get everyone on board? How can we invite our students, our teachers, and our families? So these will be key steps for getting started this September. And we're excited to show you. And again, if you have questions throughout or there's something you want me to elaborate on, feel free to put that in the chat. And we'll end with some next steps as well as a more formal Q&A time. So our objective today, what I'm here for you, is to help you gain that confidence and clarity to use SpacesEDU with your students. We'll provide you with actionable next steps to start implementing it as soon as tomorrow. I don't know if you're going to see students tomorrow, but hopefully as soon as September 3rd or whenever your first day of school is. So first, I'd like to get to know a little bit about who's in the room with us today. So I'm going to launch a poll. My poll should be able to be similar to Tatiana. Do you see the poll? Oh, there it is. First thing there. So the poll, I would like to know a little bit more of your level of knowledge. So beginner, you're just starting out. Intermediate, you may have some experience, or you're at that expert level. You could probably be leading this session. All right, so we have a variety in the room, and no matter where your level of SpacesEDU knowledge is, we'll have something for you today. Awesome. So I'll give a few more moments. Ooh, expert level. So again, I'm here to learn from you today too. So feel free to jump in the chat if you notice something that you're doing with Spaces EDU that best works for you, because I know you're the ones using it with your students. Great. So I will end the poll. So we have a variety of levels, pretty split actually, which is awesome to see. Great. I'll share the results so you all can see the split we have. Most of you are at that intermediate level, which is awesome. Okay. So what is Spaces EDU? Now, some of you may already be familiar, but Spaces EDU is that digital portfolio and competency-based assessment platform built to showcase growth. So through Spaces EDU, you can connect with families, students, and educators to showcase learning for students and highlight all their amazing successes. What I love about Spaces EDU is the versatility. As an educator, I feel like I was a bit more in the paper age, even though I was only out of the classroom for a little bit. But having a platform like Spaces EDU would have revolutionized my teaching abilities. And it's available on the App Store and Google Play. So there's so many things that Spaces EDU does. You'll see on the screen there, it's a screenshot of our platform. We have curriculum expectations, a new growth book, so much I would love to share with you, but today we're just going to get started and we're going to show you what you can do today. And if you're looking to learn more and continue to expand, we're excited to be with you this school year to help you grow. But I'm excited to get started. And if you have any questions, feel free to continue to post in the chat. But really excited to be with you today. So I love to learn from you. Why did you join this session today? What are you most interested in learning? So feel free to add in the chat something specific or maybe something general. Great, Yvette. So asked to take the lead on this with your district. So you're ready to get some good implementation tips, I bet. Awesome. Anyone else? What are you hoping to gain from the session today? Amazing. Engage better with parents and how they can interact with the online portfolio. How can we get parents to be more engaged? For sure. Looking what's new, definitely using electronic portfolios and being able to mentor colleagues. Yes. I feel like if you're someone at your school that is that Spaces EDU expert, sharing information with your colleagues is an amazing way to make sure it's being utilized effectively. Awesome. Well, I will showcase in the demo when I jump in some of the things that may have changed. We did have a release recently, so you may notice a little bit of a fresher look. And again, please jump in if you notice anything like you really want me to focus in on. But excited to see we have a range of hopes for today in the session. So I added this quote in here, which I really love because I think it's important for us to take a step back from what we're doing and what is the purpose for what we're doing. So John Hattie says that when teaching and learning are visible, there's a greater likelihood of students reaching higher levels of achievement. So that is that big question. How can we make learning visible? We can put it up on the walls. We can do it in so many ways, but how can we make it transcend beyond those classrooms? And that is when Spaces EDU comes in, bringing that learning to life through this digital platform. So what I'll talk to you about today is digital documentation. How can it be done in Spaces EDU effectively? And again, flexible for your learning environments. All of you may be teaching different grades, maybe in different roles. So how can it best work for you? So the question I'd like to pose to you all first, and you can reflect on it, you can also type in the chat, why is digital documentation important? So why is that important to you in your role? So I'll kind of keep an eye on the chat, but I know for me, digital documentation is important to keep track of everything in one place. Yes, you can visually see a baseline of growth and achievement. Definitely. So if you're doing something in September, you're having that documented, then it can be all the way until June. You can see that growth. So that's able to have that all digitally. I think that's an amazing way. Family engagement. Yes, families aren't in the classroom with us. So how can we bring them in and make them feel part of the community? Yes, celebrating and reflecting, definitely. Because I know I don't remember what I did last week sometimes, so students aren't going to remember what they did every single day, but having it all in Spaces EDU can help them be like, oh, wow, I've done so much this school year and I should be really proud of this. ongoing communication, examples of growth, and goal setting. I love goal setting. I think that's really key. When I used to set goals with my students, we would do it at reporting time on paper, and then inevitably we'd lose track. So how can we make sure goals are continue to be top of mind? And doing that digitally, I think, is the best way. Great. So without further ado, how can Spaces EDU help you reach those goals? So we providing that opportunity to have authentic evidence. What's taking place in the classroom and how can we best showcase this? As someone mentioned, seeing growth over time. So making sure to highlight those special moments of learning and seeing how we amazingly grow over the school year and over K to 12. So Spaces EDU can follow you from that whole school experience. So it's pretty neat to see how students can grow and to really celebrate that. All voices represented. So making sure we are incorporating co-teachers if you do work in a school where you are working with many teachers, family members as well. Everyone can be a part of this environment and having that ongoing communication and feedback. So making sure students feel as though their voice is being heard, you're giving them feedback on an ongoing basis. And that makes sure that when reporting comes, nothing's a surprise. They're already being in tune with what's happening in their learning, where their areas of need are, and where their strengths are. Yeah, celebrate the ta-da moments. I love that. That's a great way to put it. Amazing. So now we're going to jump into the Spaces EDU account. Before I do that, I wanted to highlight our 3 flexible learning environments, which we call spaces. So we have the class space, the one-to-one space, which was formerly called the individual space. So you may be familiar with that term, but it is that same space. So the class space is a space for all your students to be in one place. It's great for announcements, reminders, highlighting great things that students are doing. It's kind of your hub. Then we have the one-to-one space, as I mentioned, individual space for those 2024, 2023, 2024 people. It is that space for one student with educators. So that's a great way for students to be sharing their work just in that dedicated space just for them. So a portfolio, maybe they're setting some goals. It's something that I think is a great way for you to be interacting with students on that one-to-one basis. And then we have the group space. So simple as that, it's a space where groups can work together on different projects that are taking place. And I'll show you some examples of what that could look like. So without further ado, let's jump into the Spaces EDU account. So upon logging in, you'll notice I have various classes that are available to me. When you log in, you may already see classes or there may not be any classes yet. Depends on how your account is set up, but you can always add a class with this button here. If you notice your last year's class is here and it hasn't been archived, you can always archive it. But for now, what I'm going to do is jump into my Roaring Rhinos class, and that's where we'll be doing our work today. So when you log in, you'll notice before it used to take you right to the class space. With our most recent release, it now takes you to see all of your spaces. So this is a great jumping off point where you can decide where you want to first interact. So I'll take a little high level look, but if there's anything you want me to zone in on, please feel free to let me know. So here we have the class space. The class space, as I mentioned, is a great place for having discussions with students, sharing announcements, reminders. If you have a field trip coming up or you want students to bring their running shoes next week, this is a great place to do so in the class space. And then we have the reporting space. I won't jump in too much. I just wanted to highlight that it is here and it is available. It's a great place where you're going to be able to get a take-home report for students with learning updates. It's customizable. It's a great way for you to take all the learning in Spaces EDU, put it in a really nice way for students to share with their parents. What you'll notice here is this is not visible currently to my students. So no need to worry if you don't want to use the reporting space at this time. You can change those visibility settings. But I did want to notice, just let you know that it is there, and that's what you'll see when you log in. Then we have our space types. We have our one-to-one spaces and our group spaces in a really nice organized way. The one-to-one spaces, as I mentioned, are spaces for you to work specifically with one student at a time, and each student will have their individual space. You may want to have all your students have a goal setting space, for example, or you may have certain students that you want to create a core competency space for. It's a really flexible learning environment and allows you to have that one-to-one time with students. Then we have the group spaces. So as I mentioned, this is a great place to work on group projects. For example, if you're doing a book study with your students and you have groups of 5 students reading different books, you can set them up with their own group space. And then they're able to work together, whether they're in the classroom or outside the classroom, keep that learning going. I also like this one to be used if there's, for example, a class club that you have and only certain students are part of that club, or an extracurricular activity. You could create a group space for that. So a variety of opportunities, but a really great way to make sure the collaboration is ongoing. Any questions so far? I think we're all good. Okay. All right. So for one-to-one spaces, I'm going to show you how you can set up a one-to-one space. Give you an example. So for creating spaces, you would click this blue create button at the bottom right. And then you'll be prompted to either create a one-to-one space or a group space. It'll give you a bit more information. And I'll right now want to create a one-to-one space. So to create a one-to-one space, I'm going to create a math learning zone. So in this case, I'm working with students, certain students on an individualized learning plan, and they are working mostly with technology when it comes to math. So I want to set up this one-to-one space. So you can choose if you want to have all students part of the one-to-one space, means each of them have their own one-to-one space, or just certain students. You'll notice here that it will be automatically clicked off to include all future students, which I love. I know if I had a student join in October, I would have to go make copies of everything and try to get everyone up to speed. But what's amazing is their SpacesEDU account will be already up to date because this would be clicked off. So just a little highlight for you there. So in this case, I wanted to just select a few students to create this math learning zone. So I'm going to click next, and then I will have my space set up. This is where you're able to customize your space settings. So you can do with it what you will, and you maybe even want to customize it with your students to make them part of that journey. So I could select a picture to make my little icon if I choose. Got a little math one here with some fun math pictures. And then I can continue to add some details. So if I want to make it the math learning zone and give a brief description. So this is a great way for students to just get a high level of what this is about, and you can customize this at any time. You can change the color, and then you can add different multimedia elements. So for example, if you wanted to add a checklist, a video of you welcoming them to the space, a link to some different activities, this can be also added. So I can save this here, and now my individual one space is set up. That's going to take me a bit to change that language. Sorry, everybody. So here I'll be able to take a look at each of my students that are in this zone individual one-to-one space. So for example, for Sophia, if she has a certain activity that I want to assign to her that goes with her individual education plan, I can do so directly in her math learning zone. I'm able to, I didn't highlight this too much, but I'm also able to tag different curriculum proficiencies to go right along with this. So I love this because it allows me to do a million things in my day, but I can keep track of student learning in this one-to-one space. Does anyone have any questions about the one-to-one space or maybe how you might envision using it with your students? Or if there's anything additional anyone wants to add? In addition to the space settings, we also have the ability to change, or the space details, the space settings. So if you're setting up this space and you are not ready to show it to students yet, you don't want a bunch of students coming up to you and saying, hey, what's this math learning zone I'm part of? You can keep it hidden from students until you want to launch it and release it, for example. You can keep it as visible. So if you want students just to be able to see the information there, or active, which they can interact with posts and they can post themselves. Similar to families, you can keep it hidden from families or visible. So that's what the great thing about these spaces are, is you can customize those settings to think about the visibility that works best for you. So if you want to change the visibility throughout, feel free to do so. And if you ever want to pause the visibility, if you're doing some updates, you can always hide it from students and families at that point. And you'll always be able to see the visibility of all your spaces easily here. For the class space in particular, there's a few more visibility setting options. I'll let you take a closer look yourself to see what works best for your students. But no, it's really flexible and it can work whatever way you're hoping to use SpacesEDU for your students. All right, so I don't see any questions, so I feel like we're moving along, which is good. Natalie or Tatiana, feel free to jump in if there's anything that I'm missing, but I'm going to keep on trucking. All right. So another tip I wanted to highlight is you can switch to your student view to test out and demonstrate SpacesEDU effectively. So this is a really neat feature of SpacesEDU, the ability to have that student access, because it allows you to, as it says, test things out before you share it with students. So I'll just highlight, if you don't already know about the student view, if you click on your avatar at the top right, once you're in one of your classes, you'll be able to switch to student account. If it's not available to you when you're in one of your classes, you'll have to just activate it. But the key caveat here is you must have a class set up first. So you can always set up a demo class, for example. But once you do this, you'll be able to switch over to your student view, and then you'll be able to test things out as a student. You can demonstrate it to students from your student perspective. It looks a little bit different from your teacher account, very similar, but it allows you to just double check the functionality. Okay. So a quick poll for you about space types. I'm going to launch that now. I'm curious about what type of spaces you would most be using or are interested to learn more about. Okay. So what space type do you use, or could you see yourself using most frequently? The class space, the one-to-one space, or the group space? Yeah, I will share the results in a moment, but it's interesting so far. Okay. All right. So have a winner. The one-to-one space seems to be the popular one, which no surprise, it's such a versatile space, and I love the ability to do so much within it. The class space, which again is a tried and true favorite for being able to showcase reminders and announcements, which I'll get into a bit more shortly. The group space, no votes for the group space. Come on, guys. That's okay. It's still a good space. Maybe it's your second or third option, but again, it's a great way for you to work with smaller groups of students. Awesome. And another question for you, and again, feel free to type it in the chat or just reflect on it yourself. Let's brainstorm some one-to-one space ideas. So many of you said that would be your one of choice. What's coming to your mind of what you'd like to use a one-to-one space for? Or what do you already use it for? I'll give you about 1 minute, so hopefully we get some responses in that chat. IEPs, great. Activities and assignments, 100%. Yeah, and for IEPs, it's great. You can kind of keep track of those expectations, and then they are private spaces. So no students are going to know who's in a one-to-one space versus other students. So it gives you that opportunity to connect with students on an ongoing basis. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jennifer, definitely. So take this time to like reflect and think about what you could use it for in the future, but just being a listener will help you learn for sure. Um, Definitely. Younger students, yeah, having that personal space. If they're not reading yet, they can still post themselves. It kind of gives them that Spaces Light, that introduction to using Spaces EDU. Student-led conferences, love that. Core competency reflections, that's a good one. That's very popular, especially out in BC. Communicating learning in all subject areas. So you could have a one-to-one space for every single subject area, and you could make those spaces visible when you are doing that subject. I know, for example, in Ontario, we do science and social studies, not usually at the same time. So you could hide that space when you're not using it to keep it really streamlined for students. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I really appreciate it. All right, any questions before I move on about the types of spaces and or the visibility settings? All right. Is one-to-one similar to individual portfolios, and class is where we assign? So one-to-one is formally known as the individual space, if that's what you're referring to, Jennifer. Um, we have a portfolio feature, which is separate, which I'm not going to speak about too much today, but it can be used in that portfolio type method where students are posting things to that one-to-one space, which is just for them. And class is where you would share those announcements with the larger group or reminders. But if you wanted to assign something like an activity, we also have that opportunity. So it's kind of a threefold question. It depends on what works best for you. But I would say using a one-to-one space for kind of a student work and portfolio gathering is a great way. And then having assignments take place in the activity section, which I'll show you where you can access that. Even though we won't dive in too much today, if you're interested, I'll just take a quick look for you. Does that answer your question? Oh, you're navigating from my blueprint to this platform. Yeah, so there are similarities for sure. I love that. And Jennifer, I feel like I might have led a training with you before. Your name sounds familiar. So maybe you might remember me. But definitely, it is similar to my blueprint and has kind of similar functionality. So definitely has those activities function. And I would say the individual or one-to-one space is similar to that portfolios in Education Planner. Okay, so next we're going to explore your first post. You've already attended 4, and they were, oh, back in the day. I attended 4 of my sessions. Wonderful. Okay, so let's jump in to the space here. We're going to take a look at the class space. So I'm going to go back into my teacher account. So again, you can just toggle between your teacher and student view at the top. Oh, top right here. And what we'll look at is the class space. So the class space, as I mentioned, is how you can have those class announcements, reminders, really using it in a way that works best for you. I put in some examples of how I'm using the class space. So a reminder about a field trip we have coming at the beginning of the school year, a place for students to share their summer memories. So this is a cool way, especially at the beginning of the school year, to build community. You could also add like funny pictures, or students could share about their weekends. I don't know, when I was teaching elementary school, every student just loves funny pictures of animals. So I found this is a great way to build community, to get everyone laughing, and then the learning can be a lot easier when you're in that positive mind space. So kind of build this class space as you see fit. These are just a couple quick ideas of inspiration for you. You'll be able to see your students' posts on the left when they post to the class space. And on the right here, you'll see all the curriculum tags. I'm not going to go too in depth, but I wanted to highlight that you are able to add curriculum tags. Depending on your state, your province, your subject area, the tag sets are likely available for you. And then you can relate your posts and tag them with curriculum expectations. So this helps as an educator who I try to be organized, but sometimes things get the best of me. This allows me to know exactly which curriculum expectation we're working towards and how I can look how students are working towards that. So their proficiency is able to be quickly and easily assessed directly in SpacesEDU. So we will have more opportunities to learn about assessment throughout the school year if you're interested. So definitely an opportunity for you to do more assessment in SpacesEDU. Amazing. Okay, so how can we create a post? So I created an example post, but I'm just curious for in the chat, if you can add, what would you post first if you, or have you posted first in your class? What kind of post would you be interested in posting? Introduction? Yes. That's the one I have ready to go. That's awesome. So a great way to start your school year is doing a post. So you are likely with your students, introducing yourself, sharing a little bit about maybe your summer or who you are, and you can do this in SpacesEDU. So I'm going to create a post. So bottom right here, create, and I'll create a post. And here, Jennifer, is where you can create activities as well. And I'll also show you another place to access it, but just a little note there, post. Yes. So Rebecca, yes, it would be more for individual posts, because you would be just assessing a student. And I think my colleague can answer that more in the chat, more in depth, but it's more specifically curriculum tags if you're working towards certain expectations that you want it to be tracking. But when you're actually assessing, you have to assign it to a certain student. a welcome post where I ask the students to be able to reply so they can start training them how to post properly. I love that, Kathleen. So using your welcome post as an example for students. So what a good post might look like. So that's a great way to set the expectations and start the school year off on the right foot. So for my welcome post, I'm going to do a little post about myself. So I've added that in here. So I've added a few things about me. So hi, Mrs. McDonald. I'm excited to be your teacher this year. A couple fun facts. I like adding emojis because I think students like emojis and it helps to make my posts a little bit more versatile. And then I've asked for students to please comment this post about 1 to 2 facts about themselves and what they're looking most forward to this school year. So this gives me a chance to share a little bit about me and have students respond with a little bit about them. And then to add more versatility to my post, what I can do is integrate any of these multimedia elements. So, for example, I can take a picture or record a video of myself, which I think is a great way, especially if you're posting and you want to just have students see your face. You can add different files, links from Google Drive or OneDrive, or any specific URL links. So, a file here, I'm going to upload a couple pictures because I wanted to show you all a picture of my cute dog, Jackson. And I'm able to upload this successfully. And then I'm able to post. So here I'm able to post to my students a little bit about myself. You can see the goodest boy Jackson right here too. So these are things you could share with students and then they're able to add their comments and reactions about themselves. And you can start building that classroom community. Any questions before we move on about the class space, ideas that might be coming to you about how you want to use this space? Awesome. So as you get ready for the school year, I'd recommend you could definitely get a chance to create your first post. You could even save it as a draft so it's all ready to go. And think about some other things you might want to be posting. Maybe you're posting on a weekly basis a funny picture of an animal or a quote of the week or something you want students to be interacting with. And you'll find they'll start to really look forward to it. And as we all know, students have great memory. So they'll remember, hey, where's that post? I'm really excited to see it. So just a way that you can set those expectations at the start of the school year. Okay, we're moving right along. I'm just taking a look at our time. So we have about 10 more minutes just over. So what we're going to end off today is a little bit about inviting teachers, students, and families. So how you can build your classroom community right from the start. I'll have a little moment to show you where to access the messages and activities tab. But if we don't have a chance to explore it fully today, I invite you to do so on your own time and reach out to us if you do have any questions. So now that you have your class set up, we now need people to join it. So how to do so, at the top here, you'll notice all the different tabs of options. We're going to click on the People tab. This is where you'll be able to manage all the people that are in your SpacesEDU class. So we have students, family, and teachers. Students here, we can see the list of the students and you also notice that you're added as a student account. It's automatically going to add you as a student unless you toggle this off to each of your classes. So that way you can interact and join in your class and see it from that student view, as I had mentioned earlier. So just a note there. Then for each of your students, you'll be able to remove them if they leave the class, for example. And you can also see their QR code. I find this very helpful for younger students if they're going to be logging in with their QR code specifically. And you can print the QR codes for students. You can laminate them. You can have them in a little book at your desk, and then students can easily log in. So you're able to print them for a few or all students successfully here. And you're also able to track your class engagement dashboard. So, hey, Kevin hasn't been posting in a while. Well, let's see. He hasn't logged in a couple months. So maybe he needs to, we can do a little prompt, a little reminder to log in. And this allows you to have a quick snapshot of that without having to track down all your students. And then to invite students, you're going to click the top right button here, and then you can invite. You can invite via class code. Depending on how your school licenses SpacesEDU, you may also have an invite link. And then Google Classroom. You can invite via Google Classroom. So a lot of ways to get students on board and on track. Anyone have any questions about setting up students? And just a caveat, depending on how your school licenses SpacesEDU, your students may already be pre-rostered for you. You will know this, well, hopefully, and if you don't, you can reach out to us. So just a note there in terms of if you might see all your students already being populated in the coming weeks. Now, family members. So some of you mentioned one of your reasons for joining today was to have families engaged. So the first step of having families engaged is to have them invited to your class. So again, depending on how your school is licensing Spaces EDU, the family emails may already be pre-populated. They're not going to be pre-invited, so you will have to click that invite button. And then you'll notice when families have successfully joined, they'll have that little check mark button, and you're able to ensure that they're joining their Spaces EDU account. And similar to students, you can see when the family member has last logged in. So you can track their engagement. If you've done a special post, for example, or a reminder, and you're not getting that response from a family member, you can just double check that last time of login. So I love that piece here, especially. And here, the resources for families are easily linked. So if you do want to share that with your family members in your classes at the start of the school year, this is a great place to start. And then last, we have teachers. You can add up to 9 co-teachers. So depending on how your school works, some people have multiple co-teachers or teachers that come in for Rotary throughout the day. They can all be part of the Spaces EDU environment. So you can send them an invite. And just a quick note here, if new teachers are joining in and they want to be trained up, we have amazing Spaces EDU learning models on Otis. They can access directly through here, as well as the teacher guide. So no shortage of resources or training opportunities for teachers to make sure they're ready to hit the ground running. Any questions on the people? Awesome. And then you can invite teachers right here with their email. And yeah, you can invite up to 9 teachers.
No, but I do want to reiterate for any district leads in the chat, it is so nice if you have that SIS rostering set up to connect your families to it. I've seen an exponential jump in family engagement when we have districts include families on their rosters. It's made such a difference with that easy engagement for teachers, not having to do that setup themselves.
Definitely. That one click, it makes it easy, and then you know your parents are on board. I love that. Thanks, Natalie. And Kathleen, at this time, we don't have the opportunity for teachers to have a family view, but something that definitely at the end when I share our product board and information of maybe requests you have, definitely something you could add. That's something you're interested in to see.
And I'm not sure if it's like the best workaround, and saying workaround sometimes makes you go, oh man. But I do find that with my student view, having a family member that I attach to that, then at least I can see what the families are viewing within Spaces EDU. And that's one workaround for that, but still put in those product requests because they do go a long way.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. And I'll share that link with everybody in the chat at the end, or if Natalie, if you want to share it now, if you don't mind. Thank you. All right. So any questions? Oh, and the last thing I wanted to show you, and we don't have time to dive too much in depth, but up here, you'll also notice messages. So messages, some of you may be using this function, or if you're just learning, this is something I wanted to highlight for you, the ability to interact with your students and families. So we have channels where this is a great way to send those one-way messages. It can be set to two-way. You have to initiate the message, but I would recommend keeping it as a one-way message for reminders. So for example, if we're going on a field trip, sending a quick reminder, and I love that you can have read receipts so you can confirm which family members and students have seen it. And then you can also send individual messages to parents and families as well. And once you start the message, then you can initiate two-way communication so they can respond. So messages, it's a great little feature to continue to connect with your family members and students if you have like a one-off message, for example. We also have the assessment tab, which I won't dive into today, but opportunity to look more deeper at assessment, and activities, which is where you can actually, I know, Jennifer, you were asking the similarity with Education Planner. It is a bit similar. You can assign those specific activities, track how many people have submitted, and provide feedback and assign different proficiency scores directly to activities. Awesome. Awesome. So I'm going to just take a look at the chat there. Requested to be added. I know, Natalie, you might be able to answer that one about admin not having notifications for posts.
Yes. So with the notifications,
Oh,
so
yes, I
it's
see.
our admin requested to be added, but then found too many notifications. So we now have dedicated admin accounts. And so school administrators have their own accounts. They can have a dedicated classroom view. And so that is better than getting administrators added to every single class. That does go a long way. As for those notifications, those can be toggled on for in-app notifications only, or email notifications only, or both can be turned on or both can be turned off. So that is definitely one way of just going into your SpacesEDU account and then seeing those notifications.
Mhm. And I know a question here I see, Natalie, I want to just go back to one of them is the question from Yvette about signatures included from them to a signifier they are okay with students being online. This would be something more board or district related, I believe, when it comes to just general usage of different apps. So I think that would be from that board level.
Yes, and so that is always dependent on the board level. Some it's a letter that goes home that's signed. Some we do not receive those students in our imports if it's been said that they shouldn't be within the platform, or they're electronic, they don't have that signature. So it really does depend on the district, but all this to say is that based on the district settings is what we receive for our imports with that.
Definitely. Thank you, Natalie. And Jennifer, I'm just curious, which QR code is it for the handout that I shared at the beginning, or is there a different instructions you're looking for? Just keep an eye on the chat while I wrap up because I'm just keeping an eye on time. So your next steps. So the presentation handout, I will share that again if that was what you were looking for. That does include some helpful, yes, here it is. And what I like for you to do, not right now, maybe as you get ready for school, to create your class in SpacesEDU if it hasn't already been pre-created. Adjust those class settings. Take a look at what works best for you. Create a one-to-one space that aligns with your teaching practice. You gave a lot of great ideas in the session today, so thank you. Create a post, a first post. I gave an example of an intro post, add a couple pictures, get to know your students by sharing a little bit about yourself. And then the last step would be inviting those students, families, and co-teachers to your class. So these are the first steps to getting started and will help you set the groundwork for a really successful school year. So feel free to add in the chat as we wrap up today any tools or implementation ideas you're really excited to try. Maybe something that sparked your interest today and got you ready to hit the ground running with the next school year, or a post you're wanting to do. So feel free to add that in the chat as we wrap up. And those joining today may also be benefiting from these ideas. So please add them in. And additionally, add any questions you may have. Our team is available. I'll share our email at the end if you do have questions you think of at a later date, and we're always happy to help. You can visit our website, spacesedu.com, to access more resources, videos, support, and more. We've worked hard this summer to update many of our resources to align with our new look. So definitely take a look at some really great updated resources and view that product roadmap Natalie shared earlier. This is where you can submit ideas of your own. We're an educator-driven platform, which I love. We really take educator feedback so seriously, and it is implemented in our future releases depending on the feasibility and how many people are requesting. So if there's something you really want, make sure you're adding it to our product roadmap. Oh, yeah, Kathleen. Oh, I love it. You're interested in the new growth book, and the proficiency report. So those assessment pieces are definitely things that can enhance your experience with Spaces EDU. So overall, thank you so much for joining today. It's amazing to have wonderful educators here on your summertime to join in and get ready to learn. So we really appreciate your time. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to our support team, hello@spacesedu.com. And we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to share the feedback survey with us for a chance to win a gift card. And I'll send the link in the chat as well. And please connect with us if you haven't already on social media. This is a great place to learn what we're up to. We also highlight any special events we have upcoming. And shameless plug for our new podcast, our newly relaunched season 3 of our podcast, Growth Over Grades. Feel free to give it a listen wherever you get your podcast. It's a great way to keep that mindset on competency-based education and really that growth over grades piece. So we really appreciate your time. If you're joining us for the next session, it'll be starting in about 5 minutes. And we really are grateful for you all. And thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to my lovely moderators as well. Thanks, everybody. I'll stay on for just a minute to keep an eye on the chat, but feel free to sign off if you don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Joy. Gonna jump
All right.
off.
Thank you. See you later, everybody.
Thank you.